Now, 49er linebacker Dre Greenlaw, just running on the field for this defensive series, went down, and he had to be helped over to the sideline. He's still being attended to.
No, I hope it's not his Achilles. I hope it's not his left Achilles.
The left one, we just got a good shot of it from CBS's crew with all their cameras, Tim. He just put his left foot back, and it did look like an Achilles kind of injury for Dre Greenlaw. Maybe it was a cramp or a hamstring, but it's lower.
I don't think so. By the way that looked.
Well, that's the injury he's had, the Achilles tendonitis.
There you go. There's your call, and it certainly was, and confirmed after the game by Kyle Shanahan, the Achilles for Dre Greenlaw. One of the many unfortunate things, a lot of mistakes, a lot of injuries, the CMC fumble, the Ray fumble, all sorts of stuff trying to make up for the ball hitting Luter's ankle, the injury to Dre Greenlaw. George Kittle had to leave the game. Debo was on a knee during one of the key plays. He was banged up, so a lot of guys getting hurt, a lot of mistakes, a lot of things to talk about. And, Kansas City has number 15. So let's talk about it with David Lombardi as the 49ers lose the Super Bowl 25-22 at Lombardi himself. Absolutely tremendous stuff. And, David, if there was a good thing that came out of the Super Bowl yesterday, it was great hanging out with you a lot during it. But, man, another gut punch for the 49ers.
Absolutely. But, hey, if you want a good thing right now, and I think people might be starved for them, some people might not want to hear good things, but I think Brock Purdy showed again that he is completely legit. I mean, he went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes for 15 rounds yesterday, and he would have done the same exact thing as Mahomes, which is lead a touchdown drive in overtime, had the 49ers not blown the protection on the right side against Chris Jones, because Brandon Ayuk was wide open on that third down. And for Purdy to do what he did against one of the great defensive coordinators I think that we've ever seen in Steve Spagnuolo yesterday, who was unleashing a ton of effective pressure against him, shutting down the run on first down. For Purdy to do what he did and go toe-to-toe with Mahomes and basically be one blown protection away from maybe winning this game, or one muff punt away from winning this game. That's, to me, that's impressive. He's 24 years old, and that means that the 49ers are set up here moving forward. They're already Super Bowl favorites for next year. I don't know if people want to hear that right now, but
I think we were Super Bowl favorites.
Story last night.
No, he was great, and the couple of throws he'd like to have back, he had some balls batted down. The one we rolled to his right when he had Debo, but he got Chris Jones had pressure in his face on that. When I walked out with Brock, and he's just stately. He handled the whole pressure of the Super Bowl, just the way he handles everything unflappably. But I saw you after the game, and you had left the 49er locker room, and you wrote about it. The Dre Greenlaw injury on top of everything else, David, and you've seen a lot of heartbreak around this franchise, and then going back on the bus after the game to Henderson, no one spoke, and it was about an hour ride. I've never been around a team that took a loss so hard. And you've seen the other losses as well, that this team specifically in Miami and L.A. and Philly, and then last night. I mean, it was a different vibe in that locker room last night, wasn't it?
Well, every subsequent scar is more painful. And just think about it, 2 Super Bowl losses and 2 NFC championship game losses. If we want to put some of this in perspective, the 49ers in the 70s, they lost those 2 straight to Dallas in the playoffs. Those are famously gut-wrenching. That led to 1981, where they finally beat the Cowboys. They lost twice in a row to the Cowboys in the 92 and 93 seasons. That led to the 94 win over Dallas. So it's part of this franchise's history to go through these gut-wrenching stretches, but they ultimately have been able to come out on top. But here you got twice that. Here you have a Super Bowl loss in 54, Super Bowl 54, 2 NFC title game losses, and this latest Super Bowl loss. So it's really 4 things in 5 years. I would say that's probably unprecedented in 49ers history. In the 70s, though, they lost twice to the Cowboys, and then they were out of the playoffs.
They actually lost 3 straight years, David. They lost to them in 71 and 72.
Exactly, yeah. But I was thinking about the one at Candlestick with the onside kick. But so 3 straight years, and Preston then Riley. they faded into irrelevance. And that's one thing that I think won't happen here, because they've built such a strong culture, and that's what I can tell from the locker room, is that these guys, I mean, they've really done their proper groundwork as far as getting the right guys into the building and having the right personalities in there. That's why they were able to bounce back from Super Bowl 54 and those title game losses to get here in the first place. And that's going to be why I think they're going to be back, because they have that they have it sustainably built culturally in the locker room. Now, does that mean they're going to be able to kick the door down and win it next year or the year after that? There's no guarantee, right? And that's what's agonizing about sports, and that's what's really tough about this particular situation, because you've just had your heart ripped out, and now you have to start all over again. But that's also what makes it that much more satisfying when you can win it. So it was a painful feeling for that team in the locker room yesterday. But the only choice they have is to pick themselves up and keep on working. And I think it's a lesson about life as well. It's not just football. It's a lesson about life. So I think that's why people gravitate toward this kind of stuff and these types of stories.
David Lombardi, good enough to join us at Lombardi himself. He and the entire crew with The Athletic do a tremendous job covering the 49ers, so make sure you check out all their stuff in the aftermath of the 25-22 loss. I think something that's being not talked about enough, especially by fans, they were 3 of 12 on third down, and the average to go was 9.8 yards. And the 2 third downs, I think the big one, the one you're talking about where Chris Jones was unblocked, and they could have had a touchdown there in the first drive in overtime. And the one that not enough people are talking about, at the 2-minute warning, they've got an opportunity there, the 3rd and 5, and McDuffie has great coverage on Juwan Jennings. If they get that one, they can go all the way down and win the game conceivably. But what was happening was they were getting in those 3rd and longs, and then those 2 tight corners were coming up, jamming the receivers. They couldn't get off the line. They're blitzing the safeties, and Brock has no time. So you're constantly in 3rd and long this entire game. They went from the 151 mark of the first quarter to the 143 mark of the third quarter without getting a third down conversion. You just can't beat Patrick Mahomes like that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of complaints. Oh, they should have run more in the third quarter. Well, the way the Chiefs were playing defense, they were selling out against – that's why you have to give Steve Spagnuolo so much credit in this game, because he was able to cut off the early down run, but simultaneously have his coverage is disguised and mixed up enough on the back end to where the 49ers didn't have easy answers throwing the ball on those early downs. So, like you said, you saw a lot of long situations for the 49ers over the course of this game. But I thought, that's, again, in the larger picture, a testament to Brock Purdy's play yesterday, that I thought ultimately was able to figure things out and deliver for the offense. If that Chris Jones play hadn't happened there at the end, that's not Brock Purdy's fault. They scored a touchdown in overtime, despite the slog, despite the grind that this game was. And we knew this coming in. We knew that this Chiefs team had the best defense that the Chiefs, during their dynastic run now, had fielded. We knew that this was a top 5 defense. I think the number said 6 or 7, and they played that way. And we did know that there were vulnerabilities against the run, but you can mask a vulnerability against the run by gambling against the run if you can hold up on the back end and pass defense. And that's what Spagnuolo was able to do in this game yesterday, and it's probably the biggest reason that the Kansas City Chiefs won.
I want to get your thoughts on the overtime rule. And last night was the first game in the history of the NFL with this new overtime rule. So the 49ers win the coin toss. Tails never fails, except for the first one of the game. But they elect to take the ball. And there's a lot of conjecture here, because a touchdown to open that first drive does not win the game like it would in regulation. So Kansas City's getting the ball back one way or the other. A defensive score, interestingly, ends the game. But what do the numbers show in that situation? There are several factors that I think contribute to making a call like this. Like the 49ers defense was on the field for 11 snaps to end the regulation. And then Kyle want to put his defense back out to start overtime. I know Kyle talked about the analytics and Brian Hampton, and he was looking at not just the 2 series, but that third series. If the Niners had it, would revert to sudden death. But everybody's got an opinion on this. You're so good with the analytics. When you get into an overtime, and all things being equal in a playoff situation, should you defer or should you take the football?
I think you need to determine it based on the flow of the game, and we were watching the same game yesterday. The defense was absolutely exhausted and injured at the end of regulation. They had lost on that second to last play. They had lost 2 guys right in the secondary. They had to go to George. Jair Brown and Deommodore Lenoir. So for the last play, which I thought was a heroic stand from the 49ers, they brought in Ambry Thomas and George Odom, and they had to deny, and it was Fred Warner's coverage on Travis Kelce that got it done, but they had to deny the Chiefs just to make it to overtime. So Mahomes has you gassed because he's just driven the entire length of the field, and you have two players who are hurt, but you have an idea that they're probably going to be able to come back in the game, but they probably need some time. If you were to assign probabilities of a stop in various situations, you would say your probability of getting a stop is much higher a few minutes later once your defense has a chance to get some oxygen and once those guys have a chance to get worked on and get back in the game. So I think that's exactly what the 49ers thought process was, and I don't fault them for it. And again, I don't think we're really talking about this if the 49ers can protect. And the number that I saw as far as protection goes, they had the Chiefs had 9 unblocked pressures coming off the blitz yesterday. 9 clean pressures, including that Chris Jones one.
Why didn't they block Chris Jones on that play?
It looked like McKivitz.
Was there pressure coming somewhere else? Were they blocked down? Nobody blocked Chris Jones at all.
I think McDuffie was coming. One of the DBs was coming. I think it created some kind of confusion. But, yeah, I mean, you have to block Chris Jones. It was either Burford or McKivitz's fault. I don't know which one. But he came
I don't either, but you blocked from the inside out closest to your quarterback, and it looked like McKivitz took the outside and should have taken the inside. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know how the blocking patterns work or what he's supposed to do, but it certainly looked like that just looking at it back. Just another thought on that thought is I agree with you in that I don't think there should be a hard and fast rule, but I just know this, and I make a baseball analogy on it. I want last at bats because whatever Patrick Mahomes does, then I want to be able to at least answer it. And then if he gets the ball and he scores a touchdown on that, then I get 4 downs instead of 3 because then I know I've got to go score a touchdown. There's no other way. So I think it changes Kyle's play calling. And with Mahomes, I'm just not giving him the last shot at it. I'm just not. And I'm not at all in any way, shape, or form saying that they should have went for it on that 4th down when they kicked the field goal. I don't think that. People have called and said that. I'm just saying against Mahomes, I want last at bats like in baseball. I do not want him to have the last shot to beat me, and that's what happened. So I would have deferred. I even asked Kurt Warner, and we were talking about it in the booth. There is no hard, fast rule, and I get it with the defense, but I can't let Mahomes beat me at the end, which is what he did.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you can make a compelling argument each way. I think it was a decision made by the information they had in the moment. Remember, he's on the sideline. He sees how hard those guys are sucking wind. He sees the 2 guys that just got hurt. Remember, Talanoa Hufanga is done for the season too, so they were down 3 DBs. So you're going to have to go with a gas defense with 3 backup defensive backs against Patrick Mahomes. So you pick your probability, right? And I think that's what they did.
The Dre Greenlaw injury, David, and talking to Dr. McAdams this morning, he thinks he can come back in maybe 6 months. I mean, initially you think Achilles a year, but really it's a 9-month injury. But he thinks it's possible that he could come back in 6 months. So then we're looking at training camp and maybe him starting the year. But he may have to start the year on IR, then they'll bring him back at some point. But as far as this game, it's pretty obvious what they did. Fred Warner did a tremendous job man-manching Travis Kelce several situations, like the one you talked about at the end of regulation. He did get, that crossing route later in the game was so hard to cover. But it was pretty obvious that they were motioning Travis Kelce just in that, motion across over to Oren Burke's side. If nobody followed, they knew it was a zone. And then he just was able to out-leverage Oren Burks over and over and over again. Part of me was thinking Demetrius Flanagan Fowles, with his speed, being a former safety and so good on teams, may have been a better matchup in this situation. They missed Azeez Alshire, obviously, in that scenario. But how much did the Achilles tear of Dre Greenlaw hurt them in this game specifically? And obviously Andy targeted Oren Burks over and over again.
It absolutely did. Before Greenlaw got hurt, if you discount the deep pass to McCole Hardman, which I thought that should have been intercepted by Deshaun Gibson. I thought he lost it in the lights. If you took away that play, then the Chiefs were at 2.5 yards per play and no points at that point. It wasn't until Greenlaw went down and they started running those crossers and they started really targeting Burks and taking advantage of Greenlaw's absence that their offense got going. I thought that Dre, that was the best I'd ever seen him play up until he got hurt. The first drive was electric. He looked like Navarro Bowman in his prime on the first drive.
They were on fire. They had a lot of energy.
He's an enforcer at a time when he figured out a way to make it work at a time when the league has tried to legislate that out of the game. I'm not saying that he's committing personal fouls at a rate that it's unsustainable. I'm saying that he does strike some fear in opposing offenses, and some of those crossing patterns that they were running a little bit later, they weren't running with Dre Greenlaw in the game earlier. That became part of Kansas City's offense after he got out of it, after he hurt himself. So it was a tough injury, and that was another thing to factor in once they got to overtime. That defense was missing those three defensive backs, and it was also missing its linebacker Dre Greenlaw, who had been playing so.
David Lombardi at Lombardi himself. Thanks not only for this, the work you do in this one, but just all season, man. You decipher this stuff so well. It's a treat for all our listeners, and we really appreciate it. And we just enjoy having you around. So thank you so much for everything. I know we'll talk a ton in the off season too, but thanks for all your work. Thanks for hopping on with us, and great job by not only you but all you guys, Matt Barros and Tim and all the guys over at Ted, all you guys. You guys do such a good job. So thank you for everything.
Yeah, thank you. You guys are doing great as well. It was awesome to hang out a lot with you this week, and we'll be after it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, you, David.
Appreciate it, man.